Detective Chun had worked the streets of San Francisco for 15 long years. He thought he had seen everything the dark side of the city could offer. Drug deals in back alleys, gang violence in abandoned buildings, and crimes that would make most people lose sleep for weeks. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what he was about to witness on that cold February night. The tip had come from an unlikely source. A homeless man named Bobby, who often helped the police with information in exchange for a hot meal and a safe place to sleep. Bobby had overheard something disturbing while searching for bottles behind a warehouse near the docks. People talking about selling children. At first, Chun almost dismissed it. False tips were common in his line of work. But something in Bobby's voice, a tremor of genuine fear, made Chun pay attention. 2 weeks of careful investigation led Chun to this moment. He stood outside a rundown warehouse, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a briefcase full of fake money. Tonight, he wasn't Detective Chun of the SFPD. Tonight, he was supposed to be Richard Wong, a wealthy businessman with questionable morals and deep pockets. The fake identity had taken days to create, complete with business cards and a fake social media presence. His hands were sweating despite the cold night air. The wire taped to his chest felt uncomfortable, and he hoped his backup team could hear everything clearly. The plan was simple: get inside, gather evidence, and wait for the signal to move in. Nobody expected what would actually happen. The warehouse looked abandoned from the outside. Broken windows, rusted metal siding, and weeds growing through cracks in the concrete, but inside it was a different world. Expensive cars were parked in the shadows. Men in suits talked quietly in small groups. The lighting was dim, but Chun could see a makeshift stage at the far end of the building. Chun's stomach turned as he realized what kind of auction this was. This wasn't about stolen goods or illegal weapons. The horror of the situation hit him like a punch to the gut. He had read about human trafficking in reports and case files, but seeing it in person was something entirely different. A woman approached him with a fake smile. She was tall, blonde, and spoke with a slight accent. He couldn't place. Mr. Wong, I presume. We've been expecting you. Your reputation precedes you. Chun nodded and tried to keep his voice steady. I'm here for quality merchandise. I don't waste time on anything less than perfect. The woman laughed, a sound that made Chun's skin crawl. Oh, you'll be very pleased with tonight's selection. We have some special items that I think will interest a man of your particular tastes. As they walked deeper into the warehouse, Chun counted at least 30 other buyers. Some looked like businessmen, others like gang members. All of them seemed excited about what was to come. Chen felt sick to his stomach but forced himself to stay in character. The auction began with stolen electronics and jewelry. Chun barely paid attention to these items. His mind was focused on what Bobby had told him. Then the auctioneer, a man with gold teeth and expensive rings, announced a special section of the evening's offerings. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to our premium collection. These items require special handling and come with certificates of authenticity. Chun's blood went cold. He knew what was coming next, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of it. 3 young girls were brought onto the stage. The youngest looked to be about 8 years old, with pigtails and a pink dress that was too small for her. The middle girl appeared to be around 12, thin and pale, with dark circles under her eyes. The oldest was maybe 15. Standing protectively in front of her younger sisters, all 3 girls were of Asian descent, and Chun could see the terror in their eyes. They held hands tightly, the oldest girl whispering something in what sounded like Mandarin to comfort the younger ones. The youngest girl was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Behind them stood a white woman in her 40s, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry. She had bleached blonde hair and too much makeup, but what struck Chun most was the complete lack of emotion on her face. She looked at the 3 girls like they were objects to be sold, not human beings. Not children who should be playing in parks and going to school. The auctioneer began his pitch. These 3 sisters come from a respectable family. They're well-behaved, healthy, and have been properly prepared for their new situations. The oldest speaks English fluently and can help train the younger ones. They're being sold together. As a complete set, Chun felt rage building inside him. The casual way the auctioneer talked about these children, like they were pieces of furniture, made him want to jump on stage and arrest everyone in the building. But he forced himself to. Stay calm. He needed evidence. He needed to catch all of these monsters. The bidding started at $20,000. Chun watched in horror as hands went up around the room. 30,000, 40,000. The bids kept climbing. These weren't desperate people making desperate choices. These were wealthy individuals treating the purchase of human beings like a business transaction. Chun thought about his own daughter, safe at home with her homework and her favorite TV shows. These three girls should be doing the same thing. Instead, they stood on a stage while strangers decided their fate with dollar amounts. When the bidding reached 45,000, something inside Chun snapped. His backup team wasn't in position. Yet the raid wasn't supposed to happen for another 20 minutes. But he couldn't stand there and watch these children be sold to the highest bidder. He couldn't live with himself if he let this happen, without thinking about the consequences. Chun raised his hand. 50,000, he called out in his fake businessman voice. The room went quiet for a moment. Then someone else bid 55,000? Chun's heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. He was using his own money now, his life savings and retirement fund that he had brought as evidence props. 60,000, Chun bid, his voice stronger now. The other bidders looked at him with respect and a little fear. 60,000 was serious money. The blonde woman behind the girls smiled and nodded approvingly at Chun. The sight of her satisfaction made him feel even sicker. There was a pause. The auctioneer looked around the room. Going once, going twice. Chun held his breath. If someone outbid him now, he didn't know what he would do. He had already blown his cover and compromised the investigation. But he couldn't let these children disappear into the darkness. Sold to Mr. Wong for $60,000? The gavel came down with a sound that seemed to echo through Shen's entire body. He had just bought 3 human beings. The weight of what he had done hit him immediately. He had saved these girls from whoever else might have bought them, but now what? His backup team would be furious. His captain would probably suspend him. His career might be over, but when he looked at the 3 sisters still holding hands on the stage, Chun knew he had made the right choice. The oldest girl looked at him with a mixture of fear and confusion. The middle girl had stopped crying and was staring at him with wide eyes. The youngest was still clinging to her sisters, but she had stopped shaking. Chun walked toward the stage, his legs feeling unsteady. The blonde woman approached him with paperwork and a satisfied smile. Excellent choice, Mr. Wong. These girls will serve you well. They're very obedient and have been properly disciplined. Chun wanted to arrest her right there, but he forced himself to nod and play his role a little longer. I'll need to transport them to my estate tonight. I trust that won't be a problem? Of course not. Cash transactions are always preferred, and we can have them ready for pickup within the hour. As Chen filled out fake paperwork with shaking hands, he caught the eye of the oldest girl again. This time, he tried to communicate something without words. Trust me, his eyes said. I'm going to get you out of this. I'm going to keep you safe. He didn't know if she understood, but something in her expression changed slightly. Hope, maybe. Or perhaps just the desperate wish that this nightmare might finally end. Shin's heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. He had just spent $60,000 of his own money to buy 3 children at an illegal auction. Now he had to figure out how to get them out of this warehouse alive without blowing his cover completely. The blonde woman, who had introduced herself only as Linda, was still smiling that cold smile that made Chun's skin crawl. She handed him a set of papers that looked like some twisted version of ownership documents. Chen forced himself to sign them with his fake name, even though every fiber of his being wanted to tear them up and throw them in her face. The girls are very well trained, Linda said, speaking about the children like they were pets. The oldest one, Wei, speaks perfect English. She can translate for the younger ones if needed. The middle girl, Yu, is very artistic. She draws beautiful pictures, and little May is the sweetest thing. She hardly makes any noise at all. Chun nodded, trying to look pleased while fighting the urge to be sick. These weren't product features. Linda was describing. These were 3 terrified children who had been stolen from any chance at a normal childhood. "I'd like to take them to my car now," Chun said, keeping his voice steady. "I have a long drive ahead of me." Linda's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, but we do need to discuss transportation protocols. These particular items require special handling. We have secure vehicles available for an additional fee." Chun's mind raced. He couldn't use their vehicles because he had no idea where they would take him, but he also couldn't let them know he had his own car waiting outside. "I prefer to handle my own transportation," he said. "I have a private vehicle that's already equipped for the special cargo." The way he said it made Linda's smile return. She clearly thought he was talking about keeping the children locked up during transport. The misunderstanding made Chun feel dirty, but it was keeping his cover intact. Very well, but remember, Mr. Wong, these girls are now your responsibility. Any problems and you handle them yourself. We don't offer returns or exchanges. Chun nodded again, fighting every instinct he had as both a police officer and a human being. Understood completely. Linda walked him over to where the 3 sisters stood waiting. Up close, Chun could see even more clearly how scared they were. The youngest, May, was holding onto her older sister's hand so tightly that her knuckles were white. The middle sister, Yu, kept looking around the room like she was searching for an escape route. The oldest, Wei, stood straight and tried to look brave, but Chun could see the terror in her eyes. "Girls," Linda said in a voice that was fake sweet, but had an edge of threat underneath, "this is your new owner. You will do exactly what he says, when he says it. No questions, no problems. Do you understand?" All 3 girls nodded quickly. Chun wanted to tell them right then and there that they were safe, that he was a police officer, that he was going to protect them, but there were still too many dangerous people around. He had to wait until they were somewhere secure. "Follow me," Chun said as gently as he could while still maintaining his fake persona. The girls fell into line behind him, Wei protectively keeping her younger sisters close, walking through the warehouse. Toward the exit felt like the longest walk of Chun's life. Every step took them closer to safety, but also deeper into his deception. Other buyers were still looking at their purchases. The casual evil of it all made Chun's stomach turn. At the warehouse door, Linda handed Chun a business card. "In case you're interested in future acquisitions," she said with that horrible smile. "We get new inventory regularly." Chun took the card, knowing it would be crucial evidence later. "I'll definitely be in touch," he lied smoothly. Outside in the cold night air, Chun's unmarked police car was parked exactly where he had left it. To anyone watching, it looked like an expensive sedan that a wealthy businessman might drive. Chun opened the back door and gestured for the girls to get in. "It's okay," he said quietly, using the gentlest tone he could manage. "You're safe now." Wei looked at him suspiciously. She had clearly learned not to trust adults who made promises. But she helped her younger sisters into the car and climbed in after them. Chun got behind the wheel and started the engine. His hands were shaking so badly, he could barely hold the steering wheel. As they drove away from the warehouse, he kept checking his rearview mirror to make sure no one was following them. The girls sat in complete silence for the first 10 minutes of the drive. Chun could see them in his mirror, huddled together in the back seat. Wei had her arms around both younger sisters, and all 3 of them looked ready to run at the first sign of danger. Chun knew he needed to get them somewhere safe before he revealed who he really was. His first thought was the police station, but that might traumatize them even more. These children had been through enough official procedures and scary adult situations. Instead, he drove to a small house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from the warehouse. The house belonged to Isabella Santos, the widow of Chun's former partner. Isabella ran an unofficial safe house for people who needed help but couldn't go through normal channels. She had helped dozens of domestic violence victims, runaway teens, and other people who had fallen through the cracks of the system. Chun pulled into Isabella's driveway and turned off the engine. The girls were still silent, still holding on to each other like their lives depended on it. "We're going to go inside this house," Chun said, turning around to face them. "There's a very kind woman here who's going to help us. Her name is Isabella, and she's helped lots of children who were in situations like yours." Wei spoke for the first time since leaving the warehouse. Her English was perfect, just like Linda had said, but her voice was small and scared. "Are you going to hurt us?" The question hit Chun like a physical blow. These children had been so badly treated that they expected every adult to be a threat. "No," he said firmly. "I am never going to hurt you. I'm going to protect you." "That's, what they all say," Wei whispered. But she didn't stop him from getting out of the car. Isabella must have been watching from her window, because she opened the front door before Chen even knocked. She was a small woman in her 60s with kind eyes and graying hair. She had raised 5 children of her own and fostered dozens more over the years. Come in," she said warmly, looking at the 3 girls with immediate compassion. "You must be cold. I have hot chocolate and soup ready." The mention of food seemed to get through to the children in a way that words hadn't. Chun realized. They were probably hungry. Who knew when they had last eaten a real meal? Inside Isabella's house, everything was warm and comfortable. There were family photos on the walls, soft blankets on the couches, and the smell of homemade soup coming from the kitchen. It was exactly the opposite of the cold, frightening warehouse they had just left. Chun sat down across from the 3 sisters, who were still holding hands and staying close together. Isabella brought them each a mug of hot chocolate and a bowl of soup. The girls looked at Chen uncertainly, as if asking permission to eat. "It's okay," Chun said. "The food is for you. You don't have to ask permission." Slowly, carefully, the girls began to eat. Chun watched them and felt his heart breaking. They ate like they weren't sure when their next meal might come. They ate like children who had learned that food was never guaranteed. After they had finished eating, Chun knew it was time to tell them the truth. He took a deep breath and looked at each of the girls. "I need to tell you something important," he said. "My name isn't really Mr. Wong. My real name is Detective Chun, and I'm a police officer. I didn't buy you because I wanted to own you. I bought you because I wanted to save you." The girls stared at him in shock. Wei's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You're lying," she said. "You're just saying that to trick us." Chun slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out his police badge. He set it on the coffee table where all 3 girls could see it. "I'm not lying. I'm a detective with the San Francisco Police Department. Those people at the warehouse were criminals, and what they were doing was against the law. You're safe. Now you're free." For a long moment, nobody said anything. Then, suddenly, little May started crying. Not the silent tears she had been holding back, but real sobs that shook her tiny body. You put her arms around her little sister, and soon she was crying too. Wei looked at Chun's badge, then at his face, then back at the badge. "You're really a police officer?" she asked. "Yes," Chun said. "And I promise you, I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens to you again." For the first time since he had seen them on that horrible stage, one of the girls smiled. It was just a tiny smile from Wei, but it was the most beautiful thing Shen had ever seen. Over the next few days, Chun found himself living 2 completely different lives. During the day, he worked with federal agents to build a case against the trafficking network. At night, he sat with 3 traumatized children, trying to help them understand that they were truly safe. The federal investigation was more complex than Chun had imagined. Agent Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s who specialized in human trafficking cases, explained that what Chun had stumbled into was just the tip of the iceberg. "This network has been operating for at least 5 years, Rodriguez told Chun as they sat in a secure FBI office. "We've been tracking them across multiple states, but they're smart. They move locations frequently, use fake identities, and target specific communities. Chun learned that the traffickers specifically went after Asian families, especially those dealing with immigration issues or financial problems. They exploited cultural shame and fear of authorities to keep families from REPOR-10G crimes. Many victims never came forward because they were afraid of being deported or bringing shame to their communities. The three girls you saved, Rodriguez continued. Their story is heartbreaking but not unusual. We've seen this pattern dozens of times. Chun asked Rodriguez to explain what had happened to Wei, Yu, and Mei before they ended up at that warehouse. The answer made him feel sick all over again. The girl's father, Dr. James Liu, had been a successful engineer who immigrated to America from China in the early 2000s. He worked hard, bought a house in a nice neighborhood, and seemed to be living the American dream. After his first wife died of cancer, he was lonely and struggling to raise 3 young daughters by himself. That's when he met Linda Williams, the blonde woman Chen had encountered at the auction. Linda wasn't her real name, Rodriguez explained. Her actual name was Patricia Brennan, and she had a criminal record going back 20 years. She specialized in targeting widowed men with money and children. Patricia presented herself as a caring woman who wanted to help James with his daughters. She learned basic phrases in Mandarin, cooked Chinese food, and convinced James that she truly loved him and his children. They got married after only 6 months of dating. For about a year, everything seemed normal. The girls went to school, James went to work, and Patricia played the role of the perfect stepmother. But she was secretly running up huge gambling debts and borrowing money from dangerous people. When James died in a construction accident, Patricia inherited everything. The house, the life insurance money, and legal custody of 3 children she had never actually cared about. Within weeks of the funeral, her true personality emerged. She stopped buying the girls proper food, claiming money was tight. She pulled them out of their private school and enrolled them in a failing public school across town. She sold their toys and furniture, saying they needed to downsize. When neighbors asked questions, she had ready excuses about helping the girls adjust to their new reality. The worst part was the psychological abuse. Patricia convinced the girls that no one would want them because they were different. She told them their father had left them nothing, that she was supporting them out of charity, and that they should be grateful for whatever she decided to give them. Rodriguez showed chain photos of the girls' house during this period. The contrast was shocking. Pictures from when their father was alive showed a warm, loving home with family photos, children's artwork on the refrigerator, and toys scattered around. Pictures from after Patricia took over showed an empty, cold house with almost no furniture and no signs that children lived there. She was preparing them psychologically, Rodriguez explained, breaking down their sense of self-worth so they would be easier to control when she decided to sell them. The final piece of the puzzle was Patricia's connection to the trafficking network. She owed nearly $200,000 to various criminals and loan sharks. When they started threatening her, she made a deal. She would provide them with 3 high-quality children in exchange for clearing her debts and giving her $50,000 in cash. Chun felt rage building inside him as he learned these details. Patricia had systematically destroyed these children's lives for money. She had taken 3 happy, healthy kids and turned them into terrified victims, but the investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Patricia wasn't just a desperate woman who made a terrible choice. She was part of a larger organization that specifically recruited people like her. The network looked for adults who had legal access to vulnerable children, then offered them money to hand those children over. We've identified at least 12 other cases in the past 3 years, Rodriguez said. Foster parents, step-parents, even some birth parents who were deep in debt or addiction. This organization preys on adults who are supposed to protect children. Chun realized that saving Wei, Yu, and Mei was just the beginning. There were dozens of other children out there in similar situations. The network was still operating, still finding new victims, still destroying young lives for profit. Meanwhile, at Isabella's house, Qing was learning about the girls' personalities and trying to help them heal. The process was slow and often heartbreaking. Wei, the oldest, had become like a mother to her younger sisters. She felt responsible for protecting them and blamed herself for not being able to prevent what happened. She would wake up in the middle of the night to check on Yu and Mei, making sure they were still there and still safe. Yu, the middle sister, had stopped talking for weeks before the auction. She would only communicate through drawings, creating dark pictures full of shadows and scared-looking children. Isabella, who had experience with traumatized kids, encouraged Yu to keep drawing, but also provided her with brighter colors and happier subjects to choose from. Little Mei was perhaps the most heartbreaking. She was only 8 years old, but she had learned to make herself invisible. She would sit perfectly still for hours, never asking for anything, never complaining, never making noise. She flinched whenever adults raised their voices, even in normal conversation. Chun spent his evenings with the girls, slowly building trust. He learned basic Mandarin phrases so he could communicate with them in their native language when they were upset. He discovered that Wei loved mathematics and had been at the top of her class before Patricia pulled them out of school. Yu was incredibly artistic and had a natural talent for capturing emotions in her drawings. Mei had a beautiful singing voice but only hummed. When she thought no one was listening, the hardest part was helping them understand that they deserved good things. Patricia had convinced them that they were burdens, that any kindness shown to them was charity they didn't deserve. Qing had to repeatedly reassure them that they were allowed to eat when they were hungry, sleep when they were tired, and ask for help when they needed it. Isabella was amazing with the children. She had raised 5 kids of her own and fostered many more, so she understood how to be patient with trauma victims. She never pushed the girls to talk about what happened, but she made sure they knew she was there to listen whenever they were ready. One evening, about a week after the rescue, Wei finally opened up to Chun about their father. She showed him a picture she had hidden in her shoe during the months with Patricia. It was a family photo from Christmas 2 years earlier, showing all 4 of them, their father, Wei, Yu, and Mei, smiling and happy. "He was a good dad," Wei said quietly, tears in her eyes. "He worked really hard so we could have nice things. He helped us with homework every night. He made pancakes on Saturday mornings and let us put way too much syrup on them." Chun looked at the photo and saw 3 normal, happy children with a father who clearly loved them. It was hard to reconcile those smiling faces with the terrified girls he had seen on that auction stage. "Patricia told us he didn't love us," Wei continued. "She said that's why he died and left us with nothing, but that wasn't true, was it?" "No," Chun said firmly. "That wasn't true at all. Your father loved you very much. What happened to him was an accident, and what Patricia did to you was a crime. None of it was your fault." As the days passed, Chen could see small signs of healing. The girls started eating more regularly. They began to sleep through the night instead of waking up in panic. You started drawing pictures with bright colors and smiling faces. Mei began speaking in whispers, then in normal tones, but Chen knew that saving these 3 children was only the beginning. The investigation was expanding, and federal agents were discovering the true scope of this criminal network. Soon there would be arrests, trials, and a chance to bring justice not just for Wei, Yu, and Mei, but for all the other victims who had suffered in silence. The girls were safe now, but Chun's fight was far from over. 6 months after that terrible night at the warehouse, Chun found himself sitting in a courtroom that was packed with reporters, federal agents, and curious onlookers. The trial of Patricia Brennan and her criminal associates had become one of the biggest human trafficking cases in California history, but Chun wasn't feeling victorious. He was nervous, worried, and sometimes wondered if he had made the right choices. His decision to buy the 3 sisters at that auction had saved their lives. But it had also complicated everything that came after. Defense lawyers were having a field day with Chun's actions. They argued that he had acted recklessly, that he had compromised the entire investigation, and that his methods were so unconventional they bordered on illegal. During cross-examination, Patricia's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Thompson, attacked Chun's credibility. "Detective Chun," Thompson said in a voice dripping with sarcasm, You expect this jury to believe that a trained police officer just happened to have $60,000 in cash with him that night? Chun kept his voice steady. That money was part of my undercover operation. It was meant to establish credibility with the criminal organization. But you weren't authorized to actually spend it, were you? You went rogue. You made an emotional decision that could have gotten people killed. The questions went on for hours. Thompson painted Chin as a loose cannon who had acted on emotion rather than training. He suggested that Chin's methods were so questionable that nothing he discovered should be trusted. Chin's own colleagues were divided about his actions. Some supported him completely, saying he had shown incredible courage in an impossible situation. Others worried that his methods set a dangerous precedent. What if other officers decided to go off script during undercover operations? Captain Williams, Chin's supervisor, had initially been furious about the whole situation. You spent $60,000 of taxpayer money without authorization. He had yelled during Chun's internal review hearing. You compromised a federal investigation. You put yourself and those children at risk. But as the investigation progressed, and the scope of the trafficking network became clear, even Captain Williams had to admit that Chun's actions had led to breaking up a criminal organization that might have operated for years. Longer otherwise, the media attention was intense and often overwhelming. Reporters camped outside Chun's apartment building. They followed him to work, to the grocery store, even to Isabella's house where the girls were staying. The story had everything that made for good television: corrupt officials, innocent children, a hero cop who broke the rules to do the right thing. But the media attention also brought criticism. Some news commentators questioned whether Chun was really a hero or just a reckless officer who got lucky. Online forums were filled with debates about police procedures and whether the ends justified the means. Chun tried to ignore most of the coverage, but it was impossible to avoid completely. One particularly harsh editorial in a major newspaper called his actions vigilante justice disguised as police work. Another article suggested that he had only bought the children to advance his own career and get media attention. The criticism hurt, but what bothered Chen more was how the media circus was affecting Wei, Yu, and Mei. The girls were supposed to be anonymous victims, but their story had leaked. Reporters tried to interview their neighbors, their former teachers, even other children at the safe house where they were staying. Isabella had to move the girls to a more secure location to protect their privacy. The constant attention was re-traumatizing them. Just when they were starting to heal through all of this chaos, Chun continued spending time with the girls in the evenings. They had become like family to him. He helped Wei with her math homework, encouraged Yu's artwork, and slowly coaxed Mei into speaking more often. The girls were making remarkable progress. Wei had enrolled in a new school and was already catching up to her grade level despite missing months of education. You had started attending art therapy sessions and was creating beautiful paintings that showed hope instead of fear. Little Mei was learning to trust adults again and had even started laughing at Chen's terrible jokes, but the upcoming trial worried all of them. Wei would have to testify against Patricia, and the lawyers had warned that it would be difficult and scary. Do I really have to talk about what she did? Wei asked Chen one evening as they worked on her geometry homework. Yes, Chun said gently. But remember, you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for your sisters and for all the other children who went through what you went through. Your words can help make sure Patricia never hurts anyone else. Wei nodded seriously. Even at 15, she understood the weight of responsibility she was carrying. When the day of Wei's testimony arrived, the courtroom was completely silent. She walked to the witness stand wearing a simple blue dress that Isabella had helped her pick out. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear and strong. The prosecutor, a woman named District Attorney Johnson, guided Wei through her testimony. Carefully, she asked about life with their father, about Patricia's behavior after the marriage, and about the horrible months leading up to the auction. Wei described how Patricia had gradually isolated them from their friends and extended family, how she had sold their father's belongings and moved them to increasingly worse neighborhoods. how she had convinced them that they were worthless and that no one would ever want them. She told us we were lucky she kept us at all, Wei said, her voice barely above a whisper. She said we were expensive to feed and that we should be grateful for whatever she decided to give us. The courtroom was completely quiet as Wei spoke. Even the reporters had stopped taking notes and were just listening. Wei described the night of the auction in heartbreaking detail. How they had been told they were going to meet new families who would take better care of them. How they realized what was really happening when they saw the stage and the crowd of buyers. I was so scared, Wei said, tears streaming down her face, but I was more scared for my little sisters. May was only 8 years old. She didn't understand what was happening. I tried to tell her it would be okay, but I didn't believe it myself. Then Wei looked directly at Chun, who was sitting in the gallery. When Detective Chun bought us, I thought he was just another bad person. I thought our lives were going to get even worse, but he saved us. He risked everything to protect us. During cross-examination, Thompson tried to shake Wei's testimony. He suggested that she was confused about the timeline, that she was being coached by prosecutors, that her memories might not be reliable because of trauma, but Wei stood firm. She answered every question clearly and honestly. When Thompson asked if she was sure Patricia had known what the auction was for, Wei looked directly at Patricia and said, she knew exactly what she was doing. She counted the money while we stood on that stage. Patricia's reaction to seeing Wei testify was telling. For months, she had maintained her innocence, claiming she thought she was arranging adoptions for the girls. But when Wei spoke, Patricia's mask slipped. Her face showed anger, not remorse. She looked at Wei like she was furious that this child had dared to speak against her. The jury noticed Patricia's reaction. Several jurors were visibly upset by Wei's testimony and clearly disturbed by Patricia's lack of empathy. After Wei finished testifying, other witnesses took the stand. Federal agents explained the scope of the trafficking network. Financial experts showed how Patricia had deliberately accumulated debt to justify selling the children. Former neighbors testified about the girls' declining condition during the months Patricia had custody, but it was Wei's testimony that had the biggest impact. Her courage in speaking her truth despite everything she had been through moved everyone in that courtroom. During closing arguments, the prosecutor pointed to Wei's empty seat and said, "That 15-year-old girl showed more courage in one day than the defendant has shown in her entire life. She stood up here and told the truth, even though it was terrifying, because she knew it was the right thing to do." When the jury left to deliberate, Chun felt emotionally drained. The trial had been even harder than he had expected. But as he looked around the courtroom and saw the federal agents, the other law enforcement officers, and the victim advocates who had all worked so hard on this case, he knew that justice was finally within reach. The girls were safe, the criminals were facing serious consequences. And soon, the whole world would know that sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned to the courtroom, their faces were serious but determined. Chun sat in the front row with Isabella, holding his breath as the foreman stood up to read the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant Patricia Brennan guilty on all counts of human trafficking, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping." The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed to their phones. Federal agents smiled and shook hands. Chun felt like a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. But the best part was seeing the relief on Wei's face as she sat with her sisters in the victim section. Patricia showed no emotion as the judge sentenced her to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Her co-conspirators received similar sentences. The judge's words were harsh and clear. These crimes represent some of the most despicable acts imaginable, the exploitation of innocent children for financial gain. But what happened next was something nobody expected, including Shan himself. As the media coverage of the trial spread across the country, something remarkable began to happen. Letters started arriving at the police station addressed to Chun, hundreds of them, then thousands. People from all over America were writing to thank him for his courage and to ask how they could help other children in similar situations. The letters came from teachers, parents, grandparents, and even children who had heard the story and wanted to help. Many included donations: $5 from a kid who had emptied his piggy bank, $50 from a retired teacher, hundreds of dollars from business owners who were moved by the girl's story. Chun was overwhelmed by the response. He had never expected his split-second decision that night to inspire so many people. But as the donations continued to pour in, reaching nearly $500,000 within a month, he realized he had an opportunity to do something bigger than just saving 3 children. Chun made an announcement that surprised everyone, including his own family. He was taking early retirement from the police force to dedicate himself full-time to fighting human trafficking. Using the reward money from the federal case and the donations that had poured in, he was starting a non-profit organization called the Liu Sisters Foundation. Named in honor of Wei, Yu, and Mei's father, the foundation would focus on 3 main goals: rescuing trafficked children, providing long-term support for survivors, and training law enforcement officers in better methods for handling trafficking cases. What I learned from this experience, Chun said at the press conference announcing the foundation, is that saving someone is just the first step. Real rescue means helping them rebuild their entire lives. The media response was instant and overwhelming. Major news networks picked up the story. Talk show hosts invited Chun to discuss the foundation. Social media campaigns spread the word to millions of people. Within weeks, the Liu Sisters Foundation had received over $2 million in donations and offers of help from across the country, but the most important supporters were Wei, Yu, and Mei themselves. 2 years after that terrifying night at the warehouse, the 3 sisters had transformed in ways that amazed everyone who knew them. Wei had not only caught up to her grade level, but was now at the top of her class in advanced mathematics and science. She had been accepted to several prestigious universities with full scholarships. But more importantly, she had found her voice as an advocate for other trafficking survivors. She started a peer support group for teenage survivors, meeting with newly rescued children to help them understand that their experiences didn't define their futures. Wei's gentle strength and obvious intelligence made her a natural leader, and other survivors trusted her in ways they couldn't trust adults. "I want to study law," Wei announced during a foundation event. "I want to become a prosecutor who specializes in trafficking cases. I want to make sure that what happened to us never happens to other children." The audience of donors and supporters gave her a standing ovation. Chen felt tears in his eyes as he watched this remarkable young woman speak with such confidence and purpose. Yu had discovered that art could be more than just a way to express her trauma. Working with professional art therapists, she had developed a unique style that captured both pain and hope in the same painting. Her artwork was being used in therapy sessions with other rescued children, helping them process their experiences. Several galleries had offered to display Yu's work, with all proceeds going to the foundation. Her paintings told the story of survival and healing in ways that words couldn't capture. One piece, showing 3 small figures holding hands as they walked toward a bright light, had become the unofficial symbol of the Liu Sisters Foundation. "Art saved me," Yu said quietly during a radio interview. "When I couldn't find words to explain how I felt, I could paint it. Now, I want to help other kids find their voices too, whether that's through art or music or writing or anything else that helps them heal." Little Mei had perhaps changed the most of all. The quiet, terrified 8-year-old who had barely spoken was now a bubbly 10-year-old who loved school, had lots of friends, and sang in the children's choir at Isabella's church. Mei had also become the foundation's unofficial mascot. Her bright smile and obvious happiness showed potential donors exactly what their money could accomplish. When she spoke at events, usually just for a few minutes, her simple words had enormous impact. "Detective Chun saved us," she said at one foundation gala, speaking into a microphone that had to be lowered to her height. "But then he helped us save ourselves. Now we want to help save other kids too." The foundation grew rapidly. Within 2 years, it had rescued 43 children, from trafficking situations across 6 states. More importantly, it had developed a comprehensive support system that addressed not just immediate rescue, but long-term healing and recovery. The foundation provided therapy, education, legal support, and sometimes most importantly, loving foster families who understood the special needs of trafficking survivors. Chin had recruited Isabella to head the foster care program, and she had trained dozens of families in trauma-informed care. The success stories kept coming. A 12-year-old boy who had been forced to work in illegal factories was now excelling in school and wanted to become an engineer. Twin sisters who had been sold by their drug-addicted mother were thriving with a foster family and talking about becoming teachers, but perhaps the most unexpected development was how Chun's unconventional rescue method had changed law enforcement training across the country. Police academies now included courses on the split-second decisions officers might face during undercover operations. The Chun protocol became shorthand for prioritizing victim safety over procedural perfection. Sometimes you have to break the rules to do what's right became a common saying in law enforcement circles. Chin's actions had shown that rigid adherence to protocol wasn't always the most important thing. The FBI had also changed its procedures based on what they learned from Chin's case. Undercover operations now included specific protocols for situations where officers might need to make immediate decisions to protect victims. Chun's story had even inspired changes in how society talked about human trafficking. Instead of treating it as something that only happened in other countries, Americans began to understand that trafficking was happening in their own communities. To children who looked like their own kids, schools started teaching students about trafficking warning signs. Parents learned to recognize grooming behaviors. Communities became more vigilant about protecting vulnerable children. On the third anniversary of the rescue, Chun stood on the stage of a packed auditorium in San Francisco. Wei, Yu, and Mei sat in the front row, along with dozens of other children. The foundation had helped. The audience included police officers, federal agents, social workers, teachers, and hundreds of ordinary people who had been moved to action by the girl's story. 3 years ago, I made a decision that changed my life, Chun said. I thought I was just saving 3 children. But what I learned is that when you save someone, they save you right back. Wei, Yu, and Mei didn't just survive their ordeal. They turned it into something that has helped hundreds of other children. He paused and looked at the 3 sisters, who were now confident, happy young women with bright futures ahead of them. They taught me that real heroism isn't about making one brave choice. It's about getting up every day and choosing to help others, even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching, even when you're scared. The audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause. But Chin wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at Wei, Yu, and Mei, who were clapping and smiling with tears in their eyes. They had all saved each other. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful that would continue saving others for years to come.